All right, let's dive in. Today we're talking about Charles Dickens and his novel, Hard Times. But this isn't just any old book report. We're looking at how it was a full-on rebellion against a world that was becoming obsessed with one thing: cold, hard facts.
So the book kicks off with this line. Now what I want is facts. That's it. No hello, no how are you, just this demand. It's so blunt, and it just perfectly sets the tone, right? It tells you everything you need to know. We're entering a world that is about to go to war with anything that you can't measure, anything you can't weigh, anything you can't stick a number on.
And that really is the big question, isn't it? I mean, what kind of world gets to a place where only facts matter? How does a society get there? Well, to really get why Dickens was so fired up about this, you've got to understand the absolutely massive changes that were happening all around him. It was a total earthquake of a time.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're jumping back to 19th century England. This place was being turned completely upside down by one of the biggest game changers in all of human history, the Industrial Revolution. And listen, this wasn't just about a few new gadgets and gizmos. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how people lived their entire lives.
Just take a look at the difference here. We're talking about a massive, whiplash-inducing transformation. Think about it. Within just one generation, England went from this quiet, rural, farm-based life to a loud, chaotic, factory-driven world. People were literally uprooted. This wasn't just about changing your job, it was about your entire reality being rewired. It created this deep anxiety, this feeling of being lost, and Dickens saw it happening everywhere.
So how did this whole industrial engine work? Well, it kind of boiled down to three big steps. First, you get mechanization. Machines start doing the work people used to do with their hands. Then you get mass production. Suddenly you can make stuff way faster and cheaper than ever before. But here's the key part, the one that really bothered Dickens: the division of labor. Instead of one skilled person making a whole chair, now you have dozens of people each doing one tiny repetitive task over and over and over. You weren't a craftsman anymore, you were a hand. You became just another cog in the machine, totally disconnected from the final product.
Now, when you have a world changing this fast, a world totally obsessed with efficiency, you need a philosophy to back it all up, right? You need a new rule book for reality. And that new rule book was basically a gospel of facts, usefulness, and of course, profit.
And that philosophy had a name: Utilitarianism. The core idea is actually pretty simple. The worth of anything, whether it's an object, an idea, or even your education, comes down to one question: is it useful? The goal was to create the greatest good for the greatest number, but that good was almost always measured in cold, hard, practical, economic terms.
And if you take that idea to its extreme, you end up with this pretty chilling conclusion. What about art? What about music? What about just daydreaming? If you can't measure its usefulness, if it doesn't help make more stuff or more money, then it's seen as a waste of time. It's worthless. And let's be real. You can still hear echoes of that exact same thinking today, right? Every time there's a debate about funding the arts versus science, that's the ghost of utilitarianism, right there.
Okay, so this is the world we're in, and this is where Charles Dickens steps into the ring. He looked around and he saw how this obsession with facts and utility was crushing the human spirit. So he wrote Hard Times. And believe me, this book wasn't just a nice little story. It was an all-out literary assault on this entire way of thinking.
Dickens gives this line to one of his all-time great characters, a schoolmaster named Thomas Gradgrind. And by doing that, Dickens is pointing his finger directly at where he thought this war was being fought: in the schools. It was a battle for the very souls of the next generation.
The school in this novel is basically a perfect little model of the entire industrial world. Think of it like a factory for the mind. The children? They're just the raw materials. And the finished product? A head stuffed full of facts.
I mean, just look at what this classroom is like. Imagination? Nope. Forbidden. Emotions? A sense of wonder? Get rid of them. The kids are treated like little empty jars, just waiting to be filled up with facts. Any spark of individuality, any creative thought, that's not just discouraged. It's seen as a problem that needs to be fixed. It's just brutal.
This quote right here, this nails it. This is the core conflict of the entire book. It's a showdown, fact versus fancy. And when Dickens says fancy, he means, well, everything else. Imagination, creativity, empathy, storytelling, art, all the stuff that makes life rich. And in Mr. Gradgrind's world, there is zero room for any of it.
So now that Dickens has set up this huge battle, he really makes us look at the consequences. What is the human cost of all this? What happens when a society decides to worship usefulness and just throw wonder and creativity in the trash? He asks this really terrifying question. What happens to us as people when we let our imagination starve?
And really, that's the question the book leaves you with. It's the big one. And it's just as powerful today as it was back then, maybe even more so. You know, in our world that's so driven by data and analytics, we have to ask ourselves, is a life made up of only measurable facts? Is that really enough? Can that truly satisfy the human soul?
Dickens' answer to that question is a huge, emphatic no. His whole point, the argument he makes throughout the entire story is that fancy, all that stuff like imagination, empathy, creativity, it's not just some nice-to-have bonus feature. It's not a luxury. It is the absolute core of what makes us human. He's saying that without it, we might as well just be machines made of flesh and bone.
And that, right there, is the big takeaway from Hard Times, why it's still so important. In our own age, an age that absolutely loves data and efficiency, Dickens' message is a powerful reminder. He's telling us that our most important tool for navigating the world, for connecting with each other, it isn't a spreadsheet of facts. It's our imagination. It's not some escape from reality, it is an essential, absolutely necessary part of reality.